The House on Quiet Hill. It was the kind of house you passed by and immediately felt a shiver crawl up your spine. Perched on a hill just outside of town, its windows stared blankly, and its roof sagged under the weight of decades of abandonment. The locals called it the Quiet Hill House because, no matter how wild the wind howled or how heavy the rain poured, the house was always eerily silent. Mara had heard the stories growing up about how the family who lived there vanished one night without a trace, leaving everything behind as if they had just stepped out for a moment. But it wasn't just their disappearance that haunted the town. Strange sounds had been reported coming from the house late at night, soft whispers creaking floors, and sometimes the faintest sobs. But Mara didn't believe in ghosts. She was a skeptic, someone who needed evidence before buying into local lore. So when her friends dared her to spend one night inside the Quiet Hill House, she scoffed at their warnings and agreed. Armed with only a flashlight, her phone, and a sleeping bag, Mara approached the house at sunset. The front door creaked open far too easily, as though it had been waiting for her. Inside, dust hung thick in the air, and the faint smell of rot clung to the walls. The wooden floor groaned under her weight as she explored the first floor. Empty rooms, peeling wallpaper, and furniture that had seen better days. As night fell, the silence became oppressive. No wind, no crickets, nothing, just an unnatural stillness that pressed against her ears. Mara set up her sleeping bag in what seemed to have once been the living room and sat down, determined to stay awake. Hours passed. She checked her phone. 2:02 a.m. Just a few more hours, she told herself. Then she heard it, a faint shuffling noise upstairs. Her heart skipped a beat. "It's just the house settling," she whispered to herself, gripping her flashlight tighter. But then it came again, this time louder. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving across the floor above her. She stood, every muscle in her body tense. "Hello?" she called out, though she knew no one would answer. The footsteps stopped. For a long, breathless moment, there was nothing. And then, without warning, the floor above her let out a loud crack, as if something heavy had been dropped. Mara jumped, her pulse racing. The air felt colder now, biting at her skin. Determined to prove to herself that it was nothing, she slowly climbed the staircase, the beam of her flashlight trembling with her hand. Each step creaked louder than the last. When she reached the top, the long hallway stretched before her, lined with doors. Most were open, revealing dark, empty rooms. But one, at the very end, was shut. Her breath came in shallow bursts as she walked toward the door. The handle was cold, almost freezing, as she wrapped her fingers around it. Slowly, she turned it and pushed the door open. The room was empty. No furniture, no windows, just bare walls. But in the center of the floor, something strange caught her eye. There were markings, carved deep into the wood, spiraling in a pattern she didn't recognize. And then she saw it. A single handprint, small and childlike, pressed into the dust in the corner. Her flashlight flickered. The temperature dropped even further. And then she heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper. "Get out." Mara's blood turned to ice. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, as if it were right in her ear. "Get out. Get out." Panicked, she stumbled back, her foot catching on the threshold. She dropped the flashlight, and the beam spun wildly, casting long shadows across the room. And in the corner, just for a moment, she saw it. A figure, small and hunched, its eyes wide and dark, watching her. The whispering turned into a wail, a high-pitched, agonizing sound that filled the entire house. Mara ran. She didn't stop to grab her bag, didn't stop to look back. She tore down the stairs, her feet barely touching the ground, and flung herself out the front door into the cold night air. The house behind her loomed dark and silent once again. But as she stumbled down the hill, heart pounding in her chest, she could still hear the faintest echo of that whisper. It was waiting for her to return. And somehow, deep down, Mara knew. She wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last.